Hello everyone, this is Erik, the Asian movie enthusiast, and welcome to part 2 of our exploration of Asian horror films released in 2013. Now, we covered most of the crap from this year in part 1, in my opinion. The films that we're looking at tonight are mostly take-it-or-leave-it movies. They are not high-priority titles by any means, but if a few of them sound interesting to you, check them out. However, there's always a chance that you may not like these movies, so if you decide to watch them and you don't yell at me. So go in with some caution here. Go in with some caution. But stay tuned because my final movie review of this evening is a special one. It is quite special. But before we officially get started tonight, we've got some unfinished business from part 1. Oh yeah. There was a really bad movie from 2013 that I missed in my last video. Now, in my defense, I had not yet seen it when I had recorded part 1 of this video, but I happened to watch it after the fact, and it was awful. Oh yeah. I thought I had cleaned out the horse stable. I cleaned that out, but there was a gigantic pile of manure that was sitting in the back corner, and I missed it, so I apologize for this. And that massive mound of bronco excrement is called Me Shudder. This is a Thai horror comedy. A bunch of students want to challenge themselves by entering the most haunted building of their school, which is forbidden, of course. So this group of 12th grade morons break into the abandoned building, which is believed to be haunted by a student who killed himself, as well as a teacher who was murdered. As if that weren't dumb enough, these geniuses decide to challenge the ghosts by teasing and irritating them. And to no one's surprise, bad stuff happens. Now, the big problem with this movie is that the protagonist proved to be completely insufferable within the opening 10 minutes. If you follow me on this YouTube channel, you may know already that obnoxious protagonist is one of the horror genre cliches that I hate the most. Out of everything else, it's one of, if I were to pick the genre cliches that I just find to be unacceptable in most cases, obnoxious protagonist is very high on that list. It takes me out of the film and pisses me off at the same time, which is why I don't like it. And any no-talent director can just chuck in, a bunch of annoying frat boys and not even bother to develop them. And Make Me Shudder is a perfect example of this, unfortunately. It's practically unwatchable right from the start. Now, there are a few atmospheric sets and locations from time to time, but they are totally wasted by having these obnoxious characters scream and act hysterically almost every single minute of the film. It's done for comedic purposes, I guess, but I'm not sure how any human being could find this film funny. It's just a bunch of terribly acted douchebag characters screaming at the top of their lungs for 2 hours. So I am not a fan of this one. And it gets worse, actually, because there are dozens upon dozens of loud jump scares, which is another one of the horror genre cliches that I hate the most. It's right up there with obnoxious protagonists, the top 2 right there. And I kid you not, this film really could have the most jump scares I have ever seen in a single movie. Like, it really is. And I've been thinking about this for the past, week or so. Man, this one, if it's not the record holder, it's got an impressive number of jump scares. And I do not say these things lightly. It's completely ridiculous and infuriating. So Make Me Shudder just keeps checking the boxes of what I hate the most in a movie. Now, unbelievably, there are 2 sequels to this movie. I'm not sure if I'm going to torture myself and sit through those as well. I certainly hope not. I might just skip them. So, in summary, Make Me Shudder is a contender. A true contender for the worst Asian horror film of 2013. It really is that bad. But is it worse than Supernatural Events on Campus? Is it worse than Supernatural Events on Campus? That movie was bad. I don't know. I'll just say it's one of the worst. Maybe my viewers would like to watch them in a painful double feature. Why don't you do that? Watch Make Me Shudder and Supernatural Events on Campus. A double feature evening with lots of alcohol. And let me think what you think. Which one is worse between the two? So, DVD availability on this movie, Make Me Shudder, is that it's on Amazon streaming. which is how I watched it. But man, I do not recommend it. All right. Now we're into like the take it or leave it films here. So let's roll. And we got one from a country that we cover only once in a while in this playlist. And that is Three Doors of Horrors, a Malaysian horror anthology. Now this anthology was developed and produced by prolific Malaysian producer James Lee. The intent of this project was to feature short films directed by 3 emerging Malaysian filmmakers. Now most surprisingly, this film was made for the purpose of being showcased specifically on YouTube. Regardless of whether or not you enjoy this one, it's nice to see a producer who goes out of his way to give opportunities to new blood in the industry. The languages spoken in this film are a mix of Mandarin, Cantonese, and Malay, which threw me off at first, but I figured out that this was a Malaysian production after researching it. So let's go through each short film, shall we? So I Miss You Too, which is 10 minutes long, is a pretty good horror comedy ghost story set in a secondary school. So school life is one of the most interesting moments in a lifetime. This is the plot. Some people, some things will forever be carved in one's memory. This begins with a man talking to the camera, and he explains that the purpose of shooting the video is to find 2 girls from his past. Now he talks about their first and only encounter while they were in school. We are then introduced to a flashback as he gets to school really early one day before anyone else shows up and meets these girls. Now I liked the sense of humor in this short segment because it was low-key and witty. There are also a few creepy moments as well, so this one was pretty good. Then we have Floating Sun, a 20-minute long story. This is a very dreamy film about a female novelist who was haunted by a vision of a drowned corpse. So these visitations began after she started writing her novel. I think it was specifically about the victim. And this film has some very nice visuals involving water, as well as moody scoring, which is always a big plus for me. The script is not quite as impressive as the visuals and the mood, and it relies on a twist that we've seen done many times before, but this is pretty good stuff. And then finally we have Horror Mission, 15 minutes long. It tells the story of an intern on a film shoot who is tasked with looking over a possessed actress, an event which apparently occurs quite often, as is suggested by one of the side characters. Now this occurs when, this possession event, I guess, occurs when the location of filming isn't properly researched. It's pretty basic stuff here, with the protagonist running away from a possessed woman much of the time. Not terrible or anything, but I think it's too run-of-the-mill for its own good. Definitely my least favorite segment of the bunch. But in a nutshell, Three Doors of Horrors is a watchable anthology. It's decent. And apparently there were a few additional installments of this in future years that I'm trying to look into and watch for future installments on this playlist. Now the availability of this one is that it is available on YouTube with subtitles. Alright, our next one here is from, I believe, mainland China. And it is called Midnight Train. Now, on the day of the Ghost Sweeping Festival, a young woman visits the orphanage where she grew up, but strange events transpire. The orphanage director denies that she sent a letter inviting this girl to visit, but she decides to use the train ticket that was included with the letter. Now, after boarding this train, she notices that the train is a bit creepy, and the people aboard are quite odd. And the fact that she has a weak heart, must take medication for her condition, and suffers from nightmares does not help matters at all. Even worse, a cloaked figure is secretly stalking her. Now, one of the good things about this movie is actually the acting. The lead actress is likable, carries the film nicely. Kara Hui also has a supporting role as a loony woman who thinks that our protagonist is her long-lost daughter. She's good in this. Scare tactics, nothing really special, but they are competent. There's actually good use of fog, which is showcased more often than you might think in a train horror film, because the train does make a few stops along the way in thick, foggy environments, so I like that. Scoring and music are atmospheric, with some bells and chanting that are used at times. The deliberate pace, spooky mood, dramatic foundation, and music kind of help to create an engaging experience on an aesthetic level. However, the big problem I had is that there are really no big-time highlight moments in this. that make the film especially impressive. You know what I mean? After watching it, it's rather difficult to remember specific sequences that show up within it. So ultimately, it is kind of forgettable in a certain sense, which is obviously a big stumbling block that prevents me from strongly recommending it. But with that said, I do think that the second half is a little better than the first, and I would give it a barely pass grade. It's a take it or leave it film. So take that as you will. Now, I don't think this is available with subtitles. I watched this, I believe, on YouTube. Yes, without subtitles. All right, our next film tonight. We're doing some country hopping tonight, aren't we? The next film comes from South Korea, and it is called The Puppet. This is a horror drama hybrid. A psychiatrist uses hypnosis to assist a woman who suffers from hallucinations, but he slowly becomes obsessed with her. The problem is that she is his friend's girlfriend, and she begins to heal and recover from her past trauma thanks to his treatment, but driven by his increasing lust and infatuation, the psychiatrist hypnotizes her to come visit him every Sunday afternoon to satisfy his sexual desires. So the opening credits scene shows a puppet performance to kind of get the viewer in the mood. And then we are treated to a brief lecture and demonstration of hypnosis by our lead character. A decent setup. There are some very light horror elements that are peppered throughout, like some ghostly imagery is used but never really explained that well, and there are a few violent moments that are backloaded near the end. But don't expect a lot of scares in this. This isn't a very visceral film. I would say it's like barely a horror film for most of its runtime, but I still think that there's enough horror content to justify a classification within the genre. There are some pacing issues here, but it is somewhat interesting in terms of plotting and character interaction. The lead actor's performance seemed a little bit off to me at times, kind of hard to explain. His delivery of dialogue was fine, but his mannerisms and facial expressions looked rather unconvincing. You could tell that he's not an especially strong actor. And on a side note, the supporting actor in The Puppet is the same guy who played the incompetent evil brother from Jumong, the K-drama. If you've seen Jumong, you will immediately recognize him when he shows up. So it was nice seeing him in this role. In a final warning, the viewer should note that there are quite a few sex scenes in this. This is pretty sexually charged. So again, I think this movie is passable stuff. However, for movies involving the concept of hypnotism, I obviously recommend Cure from 1997, my favorite Japanese film of all time. The Hypnotist from 1999, another Japanese film, before this one. Watch those first. And I would also recommend Hypnotized from 2004, which has a similar premise to this. That's a Korean film about a guy that hypnotizes a woman for some sexual favors. And that's a far better film than The Puppet. So I would say watch those three films first. And then if you're into, you want to try a little bit more of, there's another film involving hypnotism I won't tell you about because that's a spoiler for that one. But then get to The Puppet later down the line. Availability for The Puppet. It's available on Amazon Instant Streaming in the United States. All right, our next film here I think is a slight step up. It's a step up here. This one's pretty good. And it's from Thailand. So we're going to Thailand again. This one is a nice improvement from the last Thai film that we covered. And this is called Long Weekend, also known as Thongsook 13. Now, Thongsook is an outcast teenager who studies in the same class as Nam, the girl he has a crush on. Nam and her friends decide to spend the night on an infamous island, and Thongsook decides to tag along. Now, the boatman, of course, warns the group that the place is cursed and they should neither stay there nor visit the sanctuary where the tragedy happened, but they do not pay attention to his words and warnings, of course. And as you might expect, the spirits become restless and attack them. So this is basically a supernatural slasher of sorts. And in that sense, it's a pretty good watch. The pacing is pretty brisk here, keeps moving. Big advantage because it's, this is a very easy film to sit through, I think. You're not sitting there waiting around forever for horror to show up, a scare to show up. There's also a fun sequence near the beginning that incorporates a brief spiritual slaughter scene, I guess you could call it, that was kind of actually surprisingly bloody, I thought. There's also a lengthy finale involving a lit candle that works well that I liked. And in addition, I liked the lead actress. I thought she was good. So why is this film in part 2 of this video of 2013 instead of part 3, 4, or 5 where the better films are? Well, it has a lot of flaws. In terms of lighting, I thought this film was not well lit. Much of it takes place at night, but at times I could really barely make out what's happening with the poor lighting and some flash editing that's used. The entire film just kind of looks drab. It's like you're looking at the same shot from start to finish, which makes the color schemes very monotonous. Dialogue and story are decent. They're decent. Not a big deal that they're not great when you're watching a slasher-style film, though, so that's not a big negative. The music, though, I think is arguably the worst thing about this movie. Very low-grade and generic stuff, which takes some oomph out of the horror scenes, because it's just so... I don't know, it's just so amateuristic, like the score in this. There are also some cheap jump scares to deal with. Not nearly as much as Make Me Shudder, so they're not in the same league in that territory. But there's a few here and there. But again, overall, Long Weekend has enough going for it, for sure, to earn a recommendation for me. Of course, if you want a Thai slasher, I would recommend Scared from 2009 first, but this is a good one. I liked it. Availability of Long Weekend is that it is available on YouTube with subtitles. Alright, our next 3 films this evening are a part of the Yami Douga franchise, also known as the Tokyo Videos of Horror, which are anthologies of found footage short films. Now check out part 2 of my 2012 video for some background and discussion regarding these films. Yami Douga 1 through 4 came out in 2012, and Yami Douga 5 through 8 came out in 2013. Yami Douga 6 is the best of this 2013 batch, so we'll take a look at that one in a later video. So that leaves Yami Douga 5, 7, and 8 to cover here, and I will cover them consecutively right now. And almost all of the films in this franchise are available on YouTube with English subtitles. I'll include a link in the description box below. Some of them are also available on Amazon streaming. I think you can usually find them under the alternate title, Tokyo Videos of Horror. And remember, start with Yami Douga Part 12, because it's one of the best installments. So I will now quickly go through each short film in these 3 anthologies that we are covering this evening. So we have Yami Douga 5, an anthology of 5 short horror films with a total runtime of 76 minutes. In Prank Phone, the first story, some college students play a harmless prank at a public telephone, but witness a terrifying event. This is pretty creepy and has one very good special effect, I thought. In Woman to Greet, Story 2, a couple of video providers, they're called, visit a tourist destination, but record a seemingly ancient ghost. Very short segment, but it has one good creepy moment in it. The third story is called Guess Deriheru. A woman meets a man in a love hotel, but things get dangerous very quickly there. Uses a human threat in this instance, so that's good to mix things up. It's nice and contributes some unexpected turns along the way. In Eye of the Fishing Port, Story 4, a TV station recorded footage from a fish market, but some of the tuna fish show some bizarre characteristics. The segment is extremely short and quite odd, quite bizarre. I can't really say it's creepy, it's just like, I don't know. It's okay though, I kind of liked it. And in Strange Campsite, Story 5, 2 couples stay in a mountain campground but encounter odd phenomena. This is like a more common alone in the woods found footage scenario that we've seen before. Still pretty effective though, mostly because the demon's face is awesome and pretty freaky. So that's Yami Douga 5. Let's go to Yami Douga 8, an anthology of 5 short horror films with a total runtime of 73 minutes. The first story is called Good Job. So this one's about a TV program that verifies urban legends that are rumored on the internet. And after trying a sort of ritual, the staff of the program record the events of the day to see if anything strange happens. And the remaining video footage was banned for broadcast. That's the premise. This builds up to a basic scare, but it works. There's not that many bad segments in these Yami Douga anthologies. Story 2 is called Explosive Light. It's a video shot by a smartphone from an airplane flying over a country in the Asian continent. But while recording the beautiful snowy mountains, the video holder encounters a strange phenomena. Not scary, but it does have a few cool images. Story 3 is called There's No Way Back Home. A freelance writer goes undercover to research the trend of internet suicide pacts, where people can contact strangers and then meet to kill themselves. And this happens in real life in Japan. So he uses a hidden camera to secretly record one of these events. Obviously, things go pretty badly. This is pretty good stuff, with a mix of supernatural and physical threats. It does not develop like you think it will, so I like this one. Story 4 is called The Prison. A man visits a cave in Southeast Asia for sightseeing. It was used as a prison many years ago, and a lot of criminals died there. Strange images are recorded. Decent stuff. And Story 5 is called Heresy. It shows a video posted to a popular occult television program. Now, the contributors intruded into a building where the local people avoid, for obvious reasons. And what strange events were waiting for them? Well, this has some interesting phenomena and is legitimately terrifying. This one really kind of scared me. Buddhist statues, chanting monks, and dogs have never quite been this creepy. It does a great job of showing something that makes no logical sense, yet also shows certain changes to objects that let you know that the protagonists are in serious trouble. It's a very good segment. I really enjoyed this one, and it lifts this anthology up a few notches. So yeah, Heresy from Yami Douga 8 is pretty solid. I liked it a lot. And now finally, Yami Douga 7, Tokyo Videos of Horror 7, an anthology of 5 short films with a 67-minute runtime. Story 1 is called Absence. The video owner here used to work for a motorbike delivery service, and he obtained a video from his colleague who experienced strange things when delivering to a specific location. Pretty good segment, showcases some ethereal imagery. Red Passenger is Story 2. A couple travels on a train, and as the train goes through a tunnel, an eerie image appears. A decent segment, pretty creepy. Story 3 is called Between the Transcendence and the Vulgarity. This video footage covers how some shoplifters are caught. There was a strange woman among the shoplifters who was nabbed. Her arrest results in disaster. This is a good segment with a slow build-up but a solid finale. You notice how these stories kind of mix it up a little bit? And some of them really do focus on human threats instead of supernatural, which is kind of nice. Story 4 is called Peeping. A mother breastfeeds her baby. The older women gather around her, but there is someone who peeps in. You know, what is this thing that's peeping on them? Sounds like a stupid segment, and it is kind of odd. Not scary, but it's kind of odd. Story 5 is called Territory of an Evil. So this is a video of a local TV crew who explore a psychic location. In an old shrine, many strange phenomena occur consecutively. So, what's going on here? Now, this is a very long segment. Okay, it's one of the longest individual segments in this Yami Douga franchise. Sets itself up well, and does not end like you think it will. Definitely a bit of misdirection in this one. I liked it pretty good. Seems like they usually save the best story for the last one in these, which is pretty cool. So, yeah, those are the 3 Yami Dougas that I'm covering tonight. I'd say if you got to watch one of them, Yami Douga 8. But of course, do part 12 first. All right, we have 2 films left to review tonight. The first one, remember, the Yami Douga films are on YouTube. Remember that. I'll include a link. So our next film tonight is called Arcana. This is a Japanese horror thriller film. A detective is driving along with his partner when he sees a ghost in his back seat. The ghost creepily points towards a few young boys playing with a paper bag in the nearby park. The detective jumps out of the car and throws the bag into the air, at which point it explodes. He then chases a bombing suspect and captures him, but his accomplice gets away. Meanwhile, a group of cultists murder and steal human hearts. and a girl is apprehended at one of the massacre scenes. She has amnesia, but also special abilities, including the ability to talk to the dead. The detective decides to help her. So this is a very unorthodox movie, because doppelgangers, ghosts, and thriller elements are all kind of blended together here, which creates an engaging film with some really interesting ideas. I really like the premise in this. And I do think that this film is worth watching for the premise itself. It does not tap, I would say though, it does not tap the premise and use it as well as I would have liked. But it's still interesting to watch the characters kind of navigate the reality that is created by the filmmakers in this. That's the big draw of this film. The violence does get a bit bloody at times. Okay, some scenes are a bit weird and odd as well. That's a good thing, because they help to create a refreshingly different experience. The lead actor from Graveyard of Honor, Goro Kishitani, is in this. Nice to see him here. And Mitsuki Tanimura also has a supporting role. I always like seeing her as well. Now on the negative side, outside of not really tapping the premise quite as well as it could have, the film does kind of lack genuinely great moments in it. It's got good stuff in it, but not that much that's really great, which is a bit disappointing given the fantastic premise. The story also kind of meanders a little bit during the middle section, but it's only 89 minutes long. So you don't have to worry about sitting through a 2-hour movie here. 89 minutes long, that's less than an hour and a half. And so it does not outstay its welcome, and I would say that it has an edge over most of the films that we've covered previously this evening and in the prior video, for all the reasons I just mentioned. So, yeah, don't go in expecting like a masterpiece. Just go in expecting like a really interesting film that kind of falls short of being great. DVD availability on this one, it is on Amazon Instant Streaming. Alright, near the beginning of this video, I mentioned that my final movie review of this evening is a special one. Special with a capital S, my friends. And the reason I say that is because it is a legitimately so bad it's good experience. You know, there are very few Asian horror films that qualify for this glorious designation. I mean, most of the time, you know, there are usually some unintentionally funny moments in underwhelming films, but to this degree, wow. Most of the bad Asian horror films that I've covered in this playlist, which I've covered quite a few bad ones, right, are just bad. But our final title tonight is an exception. Oh yes, this one is entertaining in its incompetence, and I am talking about The Crone, a Japanese horror film from 2013. From the producer of The Ring, The Grudge, and Dark Water, after he filed bankruptcy, comes this macabre tale of 3 talentless amateur pop singers who are cursed by the spirit of an old woman who can run at super fast speeds. They subsequently venture to an abandoned nursing home in the mountains and discover the horrifying secrets therein. But can they survive this old hag's evil powers and continue their careers as talentless hacks, just like AKB48? Well, at the beginning of this movie, you actually get a few moments that show the fakeness of idol culture. And I think they do this intentionally, and that's actually a legitimately positive aspect of this. Because these pop singer characters basically hate one another off camera. They're backstabbers. And while watching this, you have to assume that this is an intentional satire on the J-pop industry. Because these girls have no talent whatsoever. Absolutely none. And their music is some of the worst you could possibly imagine. Like, some of their performances are so bad. Like, I really hope this movie was not taking their performances seriously. I have to assume that it was intentional. I have to. But it's still pretty funny to watch. Now, the storytelling is pretty thin in this. So the film moves very quickly, though. And it basically consists of just horror sequence after horror sequence and little else. And the good thing is that there are only a few jump scares. It's almost like the filmmakers tried to create creepy scenes. You know what I mean? So they don't usually go for the cheap scare, which is kind of a good thing again. I'm almost convincing myself that this is a good movie now. So there's some genuine creativity on display here, and you can tell they're trying. It's poorly executed creativity for the most part, but, you know, this is one of those charming, B-grade, spooky, dumb horror films that somehow creates entertaining moments, even when it fails to scare the viewer. Kind of hard to explain, but this is an absolute riot if you're in the right mood. I mean, just think about it here. The premise is that the villain is a really old, I'm talking really old, like a woman in her 70s or 80s. Very short, with puffy white hair, who runs at super fast speeds. Yeah, there's actually a scene involving her white hair that's one of the funniest moments of any film in recent memory. It's amazing. It's amazing. I watched this movie again. I actually added it to my DVD collection. And I watched it like a week ago, and man, that scene's just a classic. And to be honest, you know, there are a few scenes in this movie that are kinda creepy. They're kinda spooky. I'll say spooky. And this film does have a certain atmosphere to it, so it's not a complete failure. It's not like, you know, it's not like Make Me Shudder bad or Supernatural Events on Campus bad. But I need to emphasize that The Crone is a winner despite its own incompetence at times. Alcohol consumption will help greatly. It's only 71 minutes long, and I definitely recommend this if you're in the mood for something entertainingly stupid. Like 71 minutes, you can sit through this, trust me. Very few so bad it's good films that I would say in terms of Asian horror, but The Crone is one of them. Check it out if you're in the mood for that. Now, availability on this is widely available on DVD with subtitles. It's probably on a few streaming sites as well, but I just saw the DVD. Alright, so that concludes part 2 of our journey through Asian horror films released in 2013. Now, we had a few interesting ones tonight, didn't we? I would say that Arcana probably has the most interesting premise. And, you know, Long Weekend, pretty good slasher flick. And if you want documentary-style horror, you know, check out a Yami Douga film. And then you got a cheesy, spooky film in The Crone. So, yeah, definitely there's a few here. There's a few here that might be worth checking out. And be sure to join me for part 3, where we will take a look at a batch of films that are even more interesting and a better overall quality, I think. And as always, we will see you next time.